Wanted to sort of open with a question. Do you want to ask the question?
What do you think is the actual cause of your procrastination, or procrastination in general? Not necessarily you specifically. Procrastination is a thing. What is the cause of procrastination?
All right. Why do you procrastinate? All right. Fear, avoidance, conflicts, emotions, doubt,
pain, atoms in my body.
Oh, we have atoms in our bodies, and we're pretty good at not procrastinating, so that can't be it.
Fear of failing, don't wanna. Yeah, that's a good. That's definitely one of them.
Time and exhaustion.
Overwhelmed.
Ever expanding to do. Okay, this is good stuff.
Inner conflict.
Good stuff. Yes.
Cha-cha again.
But I haven't seen any real answers in here.
No. We have made a life study of procrastination.
Yes. For ourselves, for the people around us. It's a weird habit of ours.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Procrastination, in terms of our experience, our observation, and also the actual research on the topic, really falls into 3 categories. There's motivation problems, where you have an emotional kind of quicksand with the fear or the guilt or the avoidance or the fantasy. People think that like positive visualization is a plus. It's really not. Fantasizing about how much better your life will be when you're done is actually terrible for you. Really bad for you.
It's true. And the second sort of reality cause is sort of not really defining the destination, where you're heading to.
Yeah.
We come up with these really big, but also very vague goals. The size isn't actually the problem necessarily. It's that it's not specific enough for you to know how to actually get from here to there. So the goals are big, therefore they're unclear, and there's no way for you to really detail it out. People say, I want to create a business. Well, there's lots of steps between here and there.
Yeah.
Or I want to write a book, or I want to make
a software as a service.
Or I want to make a certain amount of money. I want to make 6 figures or something along those lines. Those are not even the concrete ones.
Right. Even like the revenue amounts seem like they're very specific and concrete, but that doesn't mean that your actual destination is clear enough that you can plot a course to it.
Right. Exactly.
But especially when you're a creative person and you're like, I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to create an LP, or I'm going to create a software as a service, that like category, giving it this category, I'm going to do an app, suddenly makes it way harder to actually do anything because it's very vague.
And the other part of that is we're creators. So theoretically, creating is second nature to us. But that's not entirely true.
Right. Absolutely. So we've got motivation problems, destination problems, as in the end result is not clear enough for you to know what to do next, or even if you've reached it. The third item, implementation. So people think, oh, well, you have a great idea. Execution is everything. Or like, I just need to manage myself better, or I need to come up with punishments and rewards that are going to help me get there. Or I'm going to break it into small to-dos. But these are things that sound, again, like they're concrete, but they're actually really vague. How do you break something into small to-dos?
Yeah, it depends on what the thing is, and which means you have to get specific about what the thing is. And also all the steps along the way to get there. So if the goal is vague and the steps along the way are vague, your to-dos are going to be vague.
Yeah.
And vague to-dos are the to-dos that don't get done.
Right.
I'm impressed that I didn't stumble over my words.
Well done.
Last one. Thank you.
So in terms of implementation, you need to have structure, a path forward, scheduling that you actually stick to, know what your next step is. You need to have the structure that you get from working in a job or going to school.
Right.
The sort of ever presence of the structure around you, which you don't have when you're working on something on your own. So it's easy to get stuff done at work and even at school for some of us. And then it's really hard to work on anything on your own time because you don't have all of this institutional knowledge. It's just, you're soaking in it.
It's a funny dichotomy too. We're in these places where we don't really want to do the work, school and a job, but it's easier to get to the destination.
Right.
And then we're in this environment where we can create whatever we want. And what's the first thing we do?
Nothing.
Funny how that works.
Actually, I think that that's part of the whole emotion thing.
I agree.
Is that the more you care about it, the harder it is to do.
Agreed.
Because you get all this emotional.
Sort of internalize it.
Yeah, baggage.
So we should probably ground this a little bit in a story, a personal story, and I know you've got a good one.
Yeah. I used to be the flakiest flake in Flakeville. Pour some milk on me. I was cereal.
I was imagining more like Whoville, full of frosted flakes.
At least you didn't go to Dandruff.
Nope.
Yeah. So on that note, moving along. When I was a teenager, that's when Base Camp came out.
Okay, I remember that.
I was super into interface design at the time, and I wrote about interface design. And I was actually moderately known in the tiny circle that I was in, the Mac circle, because I would write a lot about design and experience. And I looked at Basecamp and thought, one, this is really awesome. This is like 2003,
right?
Or early 2004, maybe.
It was kind of a mold breaker.
Yeah,
in a lot of
it
ways.
was really different in a lot of ways. And like I had built apps for people. That was what I was doing as a freelancer, building apps, ticketing systems, and escalation and all that crap. And I looked at Basecamp and thought, they're making a lot of money. I could do this better. And so I started making all these plans for all of this this really great piece of software that I would do, and then I would have all these ideas, and I had it was like X Note or something on my Mac, and I wrote all my notes down and all my plans and all kinds of drawings and stuff, and I never did any of it. Never did any of it. Ever.
So it's just like a graveyard.
Yeah. So for like 5 years, I was telling myself I should build a business. Software as a service is where it's at because of the recurring revenue. I know I could do this better. I can both program and design it, and I didn't do it.
That sounds like the kinds of stuff that we hear from a lot of folks. I know I've got, like, I already get paid to do this. I know I'm good at it. Yeah. Why is it that when I go out to do it on my own, you end up with that graveyard of great ideas?
Yes. And naturally, because I knew that I could do it and wasn't doing it and had all these plans and I wasn't executing on any of them, I felt like shit. Really.
You feel like even if you don't tell anybody, you feel like a hypocrite.
Completely.
Right.
Hypocrisy that's a good word for what I was feeling. So fast forward to like, what was it? It was 2008. Yeah. It was 2008 when Color Wars happened.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So in between here, that time, I worked for Bear Stearns. I worked for LimeWire. I worked with Alex and our friend Eric for Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
And through Eric, I got introduced to Zay Frank. And we worked together on this project called Color Wars, which was for fun.
It was sort of like a capture the flag
on Twitter,
games on top of games. It was one of those like beautiful, artsy, purely for fun before the marketers took over Twitter, where people could join teams and play games and create things together. Yeah,
it was really, really, really fun. And it was one of the first things I ever actually worked on that actually shipped. I mean, from the projects I worked on in my jobs to the projects I worked on for my startup clients to Bear Stearns, everything died.
Well, that's the pain of working for companies and things like that, where you put your energy into creating things and then it doesn't ship.
Yeah.
It's just like another layer of like cruft built up on that anxiety of why is it that my stuff doesn't make it into
right. I felt like I had the touch of death.
But back to Color Wars.
So Color Wars.
So this is Color Wars rejuvenating. It's the opposite of what you just described in so many ways.
I provided design stuff to Color Wars, and Zay Frank and Eric and you guys were working on like technical stuff and HTML and JavaScript in the back end stuff. And I was like, here's some designs. And we're like, great. Zay Frank said, ship it.
Yeah, this is a guy who I remember a one-on-one conversation he and I had on the phone about sort of his style of putting things out into the world, and the undoneness was a very intentional thing for him.
Yeah.
And that was something I remember saying, was like, this is totally new for me, and it feels good, and it feels good to be led in this direction.
Yes, he didn't ever explicitly explain it to me like that, but it came through his management style, which was very low key. So boom, it was online.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
And not just online, but
people were using it.
Well, and he's got huge amounts of followers. So like instantly people are using it. They're having fun with it.
So gratifying.
They don't know maybe that we have anything to do with it, but to watch other people gain joy and therefore value from our work.
Yes. Instead of sitting at home by myself, knowing that my ideas and my work was superior, which it was.
Yeah.
Actually watching people use it and enjoy it and watching it spread was the best feeling. The best. And so after that,
Yeah.
right, I had designed this in my head in the shower over months, designed this art project that would use Twitter's data to create this amazing like visualization of all the emotions and daily stuff people were sharing on Twitter that wasn't coming through. It's like an amazing data source. And I went to Twitter back when they were like, I don't know, 50 people. And we had a meeting with Ev. And we said, one, we can fix your JavaScript problems in 2 days. Remember when it was so
Constantly
slow?
crashing.
The JavaScript was so slow that like the typing in the box would lag.
The one thing that a box is supposed to do is allow you to type into it.
And only 140 characters. And you're like, letter. Anyway, so we could fix this. And I pitched this design project, this art project. And they're like, that sounds amazing. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, we cannot get the political will together to hire you. And then I was like, well, there goes that project. And then one day I was just futzing around the internet. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm a hypocrite.
Why?
Why am I waiting for someone to pay me to do something I can do on my own? So I accosted my husband in the bath and I was like, hey, what was the name of that XML to JSON gateway that we saw the other day, blah, blah, blah. And then we built TwistStory.
And he said, honey, are you okay?
Yeah, Thomas is used to it. So so we built TwistStory, and TwistStory was the first software project I had ever actually shipped on my own, ever. It was amazing. And people loved it. Yeah. And it was like 1% of what I had imagined it to be. I had designed in my head all of these.
How long did it actually take you to build that version that you put out in the world?
A few hours.
So this is like super, super bare bones.
Yeah. There were no graphics even. It was just Helvetica. I was like, no delays. I wasn't even going to write a back end, but the API thing was gone. So Thomas wrote a little shell script while I did the front end.
So, and you put it out there, and what happened then? I mean,
people loved it. It went everywhere.
It's been in museums.
It's been in museums. People have used it behind their bands during music shows. What was it? CEO of Microsoft used it in one of their internal meetings as like his framework for his speech. That. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
and I sent him a total creepy email, and he was like,
True to form. True to form, Amy Hoy.
So
true to form.
And I was like angling for him to hire me to do something.
All right, so
So that got us a lot of clients too, who actually then shipped our work, and then we used that money to bankroll. But the most important thing is, I was like, I've tasted shipping things. I know what I can do, and the joy of having people use my stuff. We are going to ship software, and that summer I designed the wireframes that became Freckle, and we shipped it in 3 months.
That's
and
awesome.
Never looked back.
So you went from habitual procrastinator,
dreamer, telling myself how much better I was, but wasn't actually doing any of the work, etc.
To there's like a fundamental change in approach
Completely.
And results. You got this project out in the world, all kinds of accolades, new kinds of clients that actually got you the results that you wanted.
Paid better.
Mm-hmm. And then as things continue to build, the ability to start putting Freckle and such together.
Yes, and I realized that the benefits that you get from shipping are better than any other benefits that you can have or imagine through perfection. So during this whole process of shipping Freckle, I used to be the one who's like, well, we should do this feature, we should do that feature before. And then I shipped TwistStory. And then Thomas or the other people we were working with were like, well, we should add this. We can't ship with that. I'm like, no, we are shipping. Screw it.
Ruthless.
We can add it later.
The ruthless Amy Hoy. So
iron fist.
So let's go back to that framework, that motivation, destination, implementation.
Yes.
Rhyme time. And use that to sort of pull apart that story.
Right.
And help you, our guests today, understand what is going on under the hood. Well, let's start talking about the motivation side of things and what really changed between habitual graveyard of ideas to the ruthless hacking and slashing. No, we're going to get this thing out there. What was the very first thing that changed for you?
That I decided that, and I realized that shipping and having people use it felt better deep down than any amount of thinking about how it would be perfect or massaging the details or daydreaming about how everyone is going to bow down and tell me, oh, Amy, you are the best interface designer.
So that's all the fantasy. That's all the fantasy that we wrap up our execution in, so that if we don't get it, well, clearly we did a bad job. Or if we ship it and don't get it, then
Yeah.
we are bad.
So right before we shipped Freckle, like, I don't know, 2 months before we shipped Freckles, when we did Fail Camp.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at Fail Camp, people were talking, I told about some stories where I like had this massive fuck ups. We were talking about like, well, what does everyone want to do now? We're doing a little round table discussion. And they're like, well, and I shared that I was almost afraid that Freckle would be a great success, because then it would just show the fact that I had been completely just wasting my professional life for the past 5+ years.
So there's something very interesting in that assumption, and that everyone out there was sitting around wondering, when's Amy Hoy gonna finally ship her great masterpiece?
Right.
Which is, never mind, a little bit egotistical, and I can say that to you because you're my friend.
No, absolutely egotistical. I completely admit it.
But think about how counterproductive that is.
Yes.
Think about, not just is it egotistical, but it puts you in a frame of mind that there are people out there walking around thinking about your brilliant ideas as much as you are, which is, when you say it out loud like that, insane. Yeah. Like, that sounds crazy. Yeah. Nobody, even like our sort of cultural obsession with celebrities, like, we're not that obsessed.
No,
I don't think.
Well, there are some people.
But they're not thinking about, well, what is that person's
Neither
next?
of us. No one here is Beyonce.
And even then, most people aren't spending all their time wondering
what's missing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the many things I noticed that I learned the hard way from shipping Toy Story was, no one noticed that it was missing 95% of the features that I had designed in my head. It was itself complete to them, because nobody gives your shit as much attention as you will.
Right.
Which sounds bad, but it's actually really freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided, and I realized that the feeling of shipping is better than any other feeling.
Right.
Better than fantasies, better than everything. And then that people will never look at the project the way I look at it. And that's really freeing too. And that no one that I know of is basically stalking my work and going, Amy, this isn't as up to your usual quality. Brr, 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 brr. No one cares.
So let's talk a little bit about, I know you are also way into research.
Mm-hmm.
And we both are, but you especially. Amy's one of two, definitely, and I can probably think of a third friend who randomly sends me academic research.
It's me, Vanessa, and who?
I was trying to remember there is another person. Definitely you and Vanessa, though, who will send me a link to an academic paper and say, and I know it's worth reading at that point. And I know one of the things we want to do today was share a couple of specific studies.
Yes.
Related to
feelings. So naturally, we all start off by believing our feelings, but let me tell you that the feelings you have are feelings. That is true, but the feelings are not true, if that makes sense.
Another way to say that I've sort of latched onto is, you are not your feelings.
Right.
Sort of there's a Zen Buddhist approach to this. Like, acknowledge that the feelings are there, but acknowledge that they are not who you are, or even necessarily what is happening.
They're not an accurate test of reality.
Exactly.
So there's actually a lot of research about procrastination and people who do or do not do what they say that they're going to do, or want to do, or profess that they want to do. Someone tweeted at me, like, there's research on this. I'm like, of course there's research on everything. Come on, this is a human constant. So there's this really awesome paper that you can find if you Google, that's titled, I Forgive Myself, Now I Can Study. And it basically proves, this among others, that guilt makes procrastination far worse. So if you don't do something that you said you would, or told yourself even that you would in private, and then you don't do it, and then you feel guilty for not living up to that pretty much guarantees that you're never going to do it. Guilt is a punishment that has a diminishing return. The only thing that guilt does is make you avoid.
So real quick, and we're going to keep going, but I want to see a show of hands in the chat room of people that this sounds familiar, that sort of that guilt cycle that Amy just laid out. If that sounds like you, just go say me, or that sounds like me, or whatever you want in the chat room.
Do you find yourself thinking about the project that you want to work on, and then you haven't realized you haven't done it, and you feel bad about it, and you just kind of distract yourself?
Yeah. Well, let's keep going though.
Yeah. So one of the other ones that I find especially interesting is the Gollwitzer effect, which you find in a research paper called When Intentions Go Public. So there's this idea of the knowing doing gap, and there's also the intention doing gap. And essentially, when you share the goal of what you want to do, or say, well, my new plan is I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, that it gives you a hit of emotional reward. So you feel as almost as good as if you had actually done the thing by announcing it. You're sort of rolling it into your identity. So you feel like you get the benefit of actually having done it, and then you don't need to do the thing.
Right.
It's like, I think of it as the World of Warcraft effect.
You put yourself into the fantasy world,
false wins,
where it feels like it's happening, because the announcing it does give a genuine feel good emotion along with it. And so that sort of supplants.
It's like a drug.
It supplants the pain that you're in, that you should be embracing to drive you forward.
Exactly.
That's very, very interesting.
It's like a drug.
And this is counter to what a lot of folks think of when they think of accountability groups. And we're not huge fans of accountability groups, with one very important caveat. Accountability groups tend to be full of people who are not in motion, by virtue of people who are not in motion would be looking for that as a solution to the problem.
Yeah, it devolves into either discussing about why they're failing, or all their negative feelings.
It basically becomes a group excuse machine,
or people disappear.
And people use other people's acknowledgement of their mistake as a source of justification. Where accountability groups actually do work is when the majority of the people in that group are already in motion.
Yes.
It doesn't supplant the motion. It can give you additional frames of reference and help you solve problems, but the problem that it won't help you solve is inaction.
An accountability group can never give you accountability. It can only give you social contagion.
That's a good way to put it.
So you'll catch whatever everyone else is doing.
Right.
So that's why we have a members 30 by 500 alumni only group, and people can only get into it and only pay for it if they've actually showed us that they're currently executing.
Exactly. If people aren't, we'll give them a homework assignment and say, you need to start building the habits that get you in motion before this group makes sense to you. This is not going to solve your inaction problem.
So there's another bit of research I want to share that is not on our actual outline. There's multiple studies that show the more that you fantasize about doing something, even privately in your own brain, the less likely you are to do it. And so and also the degree of detail in your fantasies. I believe that the famous study it's in Stumbling on Happiness, references it. They talked about men and women who had fantasies about introducing themselves to their crush and asking them out. And the more detailed their fantasies were, the less likely they were to ever do it. So
I think it's like that, like a deep-rooted part of our brain that our ability to imagine all of those potential outcomes becomes real enough for us to not actually approach the outcomes.
Yeah, and it's not nearly as good as the real thing, but it's like a good enough hit, I suppose, to sort of distract people from actually doing it.
So there's some actionable advice that we want to share to help overcome this motivation challenge, because it is a real challenge. The first of them, instead of burying the pain under fantasy of where you're going to go, fully embrace that pain. We call it your fuck this moment, where you really just throw your hands in the air and say, I cannot keep going on this way.
I will not live like this anymore. Because think about it. If you don't act, the next, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life are going to be exactly the same as they are now, if not worse.
So having your fuck this moment, or figuring out what it is, you might have already had it, you've just been ignoring it, is important.
Yeah, I think a lot of us in our daily lives were really not that happy with our careers or our output or whatever. And we just kind of stuff it down. So if you are stuffing down your feelings that are negative, you are not going to be able to feel the positive effects either. That's unfortunate.
Which brings us to a second piece of actionable advice, which is to think hard about what you want more. Do you want to protect your feelings? The good feelings, the bad feelings? Are you living for them, or are you living for yourself?
Yeah.
Are you working for them, or are you working for yourself?
Decent servant, terrible master.
True.
So people tell us, I won't do this because I'm afraid of failure. But the harsh truth is that if you're afraid of failure, well, then the number one thing you never want to do is nothing.
Okay, that's choosing failure by default.
Failure by default. You're like, what fear of failure really is I'm going to pretend that I didn't try, therefore it can't be my fault.
But there's a healthy way to do this. There's a better way to do this.
There's a way better way to do this.
So the first thing is to choose something small and winnable.
Right.
In the right direction.
So you've got all these feelings and fantasies about doing stuff, and there are good feelings and there are bad feelings, and there are good fantasies and there are bad fantasies. What you basically need to do, because those things are weaker than reality, you need to give yourself reality instead.
Right.
So you want to ship something small.
So in this case, so Zay sort of threw you into the deep end of that pool, and you got the result of that. Whatever the result was going to be, you didn't know what it was going to be, you didn't know what to expect. And frankly, even if you did, that wouldn't have been to your advantage. Like now you know that it feels broadly good.
Yes.
But
our students all the time, we tell them, you need to do this. You won't understand what it's like and how much better it is until you do it. And then they do it. And then they get their first subscriber or they make their first sale. And I say, would you have believed me? Did you believe me when I told you what a game changer this is?
They always say the same thing.
They always say no, because you cannot understand what a game changer it is until you do it. So you're building trust with yourself when you do the things that you want to do and that you said you will do.
Oh, and I'm glad you said it that way too, because that's something that I notice in folks who reply to our, what'd you do?
Let me put the straw up my nose.
We do things live here. So we hear from people who join our mailing list, respond to our welcome email, people in class all the time. I think people's lack of trust in themselves, which probably ties back to that guilt cycle we talked about earlier, is one of the first things that needs to be broken. And so by choosing small things that you do, you follow through, you make a commitment to yourself, and then you actually do it, you start rebuilding trust with yourself, which
is the basis of any relationship.
And like anything else, start small, grow and grow and grow and grow and grow.
Absolutely. It's really important. Cool. Because if there's anything a procrastinator doesn't have, it's any kind of self-trust. And then you start being really down on yourself, and then you start feeling guilty, which then you have to avoid thinking about, and then you end up doing nothing.
Right. So there's a flip side of this coin with that, just with your fuck this moment. Yeah. When you look at something and you go, you know what? I don't think I want this. Either I don't think I want it at all, or I don't want this version.
Right. So a lot of people, we find, they come to us and they say, I want to write a book, or I want to build an app or a business, whatever. And they don't really want it. They think that they should want it.
Right.
And they've been beating themselves up over the years saying, well, you need to do this. You ought to want to do this.
This is the next step in my career. This is what will take me to the next level. This is how I get taken seriously.
Everybody who's smart does this thing.
Yeah, all of those reasons. And if you take the time to say, you know what, I don't want this, but that's okay, it can actually be very freeing.
Well, yeah.
For you to then move on to something that you do really want to do, and then apply all of these other things to it, the fuck this moment, and so on and so forth.
Well, the more you lash yourself, the less likely you are to ever do it. But also, if you're always trying to avoid or guilt yourself, then you can't tell what you want.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing how long some people go thinking they know what they want, only to find out that they were wrong.
But they also, well, I think a lot of people, and I know I have had the situation where I said, stop telling myself I had to do it. And then I gave myself a break, and then I wanted to do it.
Right.
But I couldn't have felt that. It was buried under all the other drama.
Right.
Get rid of the drama. No drums.
Right. And just making that choice, giving yourself the ability to make that choice and say, I don't want to do this. And like you just gave the example, you're allowed to change your mind. Like nobody's keeping score here. Now, if you make a promise to someone and you don't follow through with it, that's something else entirely.
Well, you just have to accept the consequences.
Exactly.
Consequences.
Exactly. But you are allowed to change your mind, especially if changing your mind gets you closer to the actual goal.
The unemotional thing is, if I do this, then I get these consequences, which are good. I don't know why I can't say the word consequences. Or if I don't do it, there are these other consequences. It's not that it makes you a good person or a smart person or a bad person or a stupid person. It just means actions have consequences. Inactions have consequences. It's just reality.
Yeah, that's what happens. You do a thing and something happens.
Yep.
You do the right thing, something happens. You do the wrong thing, something happens. You're not actually in control of what happens. You're just in control of what you do.
Yep.